welcome back. This is the second conversation that Dom and I are having. Really great to speak to you again. I'm really pleased to have you here. Today, we have decided that our topic was going to be aligning work with passion, and we can slightly veer off. Was there anything that you sort of wanted to add in as the things that we should talk about alongside aligning work with passion?
I think that's pretty much quite a deep topic, so we'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, great. I think we should start off by trying to define what passion means to us, because I'm sure there's like an actual definition for passion, but I think it's really personal. And it might be quite interesting to explore that and discuss it to try and figure out what does passion actually mean to us. So I was just thinking, I was standing outside and just saying bye to my cousin. And I was thinking about how the mind and what I care about, my priorities will be totally different when I'm leading from my passions, and how something that I'm passionate about means to me that I actually don't take into account certain criteria, philosophies, and limitations that I would normally take into account, stuff that I would normally be very cautious of and aware of. And I can throw all of that out and start to lead from a different space. I'm not thinking from an analytical space. I'm not worried or anxious about the projects because I am feeling the project. Instead, I'm being led by a different part of me in a different energy center. So I just thought I'd throw that out there to open up the discussion and melt the ice a little bit here. How would you describe passion in your definition?
I think you're right with terms about it being personal, because when you mentioned it, I've never really deeply thought about the word passion in and of itself. But in terms of like what I'm passionate about, it's totally personal, and what passion probably means to each person is probably personal as well. I think
Yeah.
like their own definition of it. I can only describe for myself. I find when I'm passionate about something, some element of transcendence there where you are finding an ability to go beyond yourself through something. I've always been quite a passionate person. And so I've had many passions throughout my life. So let's just take the first one, football. I was so obsessed with it. It's all I do. But when I was playing football, I was going beyond myself. I think. So it was like a form of transcendence. And for me anyway, it was like connecting with something higher than myself when I do it. And that's what made it a passion compared to say, because there's many other different things we can do in the day, but there's this one thing that sticks out, right? And we enjoy doing it. I don't know about you. When I think of passion, I think of fire energy. These kind of ideas come to mind, something that really gets you kind of going.
That burning inside.
Yeah. Would you say you're quite a passionate person?
When you were saying that you've been a very passionate person for like the whole of your life, I was just wondering whether the old me would have defined myself as a passionate person. But I can see how there's a different type of passion that I've found now, and that I was conflicted between trying to make myself passionate about the things that I needed to be doing and be
Right.
in the survival instinct and the positive reflection on life. Like there's certain instances where we don't really get a chance to be passionate because we've got to pay bills, we've got to like sort life out, we've got to eat, we've just got to make ends meet, and we don't get time for passion. But I can see how I have in the past created a mindset so that I would still feel like I was in passion and that I was being passionate about what I was up to, but there was no fire. Definitely wasn't that burning desire to do more and to learn more. And I think I used to consider myself to be very passionate about my old job, about being an optician. And I used to feel like I was very much in alignment with my old work and that I loved the job, but I realized over time that I loved certain aspects of the job. I loved the interpersonal relationships that I would have with my clients. I used to love the fashion side of things, talking and helping people choose like designer glasses that looked great and made them feel really good about themselves. And I didn't really care too much about the health side of things, about the further learning that's required to continually grow and evolve as an optician. And I certainly didn't really have any drive to progress within the field of optometry any further than where I was. And I feel like maybe that was a confusion about what passion actually really meant.
Yeah. Interesting. And when you were a kid, can you remember, was there other things that you were passionate about? Like when did passion like first come into your kind of awareness? Like,
Yeah.
what was the kind of thing that you can remember that you were like, I like this?
So that was a really important question for me, actually. I remember wondering what I was going to do with my life. And as I was rebuilding myself from the ground up, I had to choose a new direction. And that was such an important question. What was it that when I was a child, I really wanted to do with my time that I essentially had to grow out of? And one of the things that I came across was pottery. I
Really?
remember really wanting to be a sculptor, and I really loved the fact that you can materialize this beauty from a very plain and just a block of marble was something
Yeah.
that I used to be so fascinated that the sculpture exists within the marble beforehand. It's just that the artist
Right.
has to discover it and to bring it to the surface. So when I asked myself
Mm.
that question, what had I had to give up or not had time or maybe hadn't been given the resources and the capacity to actually explore? I decided that I would try and follow a few of those. And actually, I really gained a lot from figuring out that that passion was just a fantasy passion that I didn't really love and didn't really care about. But because I had never tried it and hadn't really given it a go, I
Mm.
had pedestalized it and ended
Yeah.
up thinking that it was going to be the big thing or that I had really missed out on being a potter. And
Yeah.
so the discovery of passion started with that question and ended up with a realization that you have to try them. You have to go and give stuff a go before you
Yeah.
can actually find what your true passion is. You just have to keep like ticking stuff off the list. Then the path is clearer once you give pottery a go. You realize like, oh, actually, I don't really like this. I'm not really that into it. I'm not driven to do this. I kind of feel passionate about it once I actually started. So I bought a wheel. I bought like one of those potter's wheels. This was during lockdown. It was very hard. I don't know if you ever tried throwing pot. It's very
Maybe.
hard. I tried to make a few vase, but the top kept coming off. So I'd get like
Mm.
halfway up and they'd lose the top. And so I have like about 8 ashtrays that I made because that's all you end up
Yeah.
with. It's just like a little mini tray.
It's funny what you're saying. Like one thing I can resonate with what you're saying is like how you got to try because you don't know. So sometimes passions as well can come into your life without you realizing. Like, so as an example, recently I started to go and try martial arts again. I mean, I did do it when I was younger, but I wouldn't say it was ever a passion. It was just something I did.
Okay.
And you know, Rohan, like, I went to one of his classes recently, and I don't think I'm going to enjoy this, but I'm going to do it because I think it would be good for me. Like it would help me like get out of my comfort zones and stuff. I realized I actually really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it would. Because obviously, you know, like you watch MMA and UFC and stuff on TV and you're like, that seems quite intense. I don't think that'd be something I'd actually enjoy, but I'm gonna go do it because it might expand my comfort zones. But actually when I went there, I was like mildly surprised at how like enjoyable the experience was.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's now like like a hobby, a passion, but like a small one, nothing like crazy or anything. So it took me by surprise. Couldn't imagine it. And like, so for the past like 2 months, that's what I've been doing and like researching about and watching and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny sometimes it can just, it's things you don't even realize you might resonate with.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, there's other things that you think, I'm going to love that. And then you go do it. You're like, maybe not.
Yeah. But at least you get to tick it off.
Yeah. What's interesting though about passions or things that you love about life? Here's a question. So these things that you did when you were younger, like the pottery and stuff like that, how would it be to go back to it now? Because I've got many things that I was passionate about when I was younger. And I'd say only recently, but I could honestly say if I went back to that now, I think I would still feel the same that I did when I was younger. Pretty much. Obviously, there's going to be Pokemon. I'm probably not going to be enjoyable anymore. Like, I think that's run its course. But would you say there's certain things that you could go back and you'd still find that same joy maybe in pottery, or do you think it's run its course? Because I would say like a friend of mine once made a really good analogy. Like in life, sometimes a lot of the time we're like planting seeds, and some things grow and some things don't.
Yeah.
And it's like you can have many plants growing in a garden, right? And that's in our lives. Like we can have many different things we're really interested in, but we've only got so much attention to grow it. So maybe there's certain things that are still there. They're still
Yeah.
wanting life. I don't know. Would you say that's what?
No, I think pottery was a totally new exploration in something that I hadn't given it a go at all in my life. Whereas ice skating was something that I'm not sure whether it was my idea. That's the problem. Like, I think with passion and hobbies, the thing that I really struggled with through my later teenage years was just that I just didn't want to do anything. I was just like so fed
Right.
up. And the reason I can see it was that I had too much extracurricular activities. My parents were
Mm.
always giving me hobbies, and like every day I had
Mm.
something to do. I was like always going to a club and I was always
Really?
doing things, and they were
Yeah.
different, like each one. And so I remember just being tired of doing things, but ice
Yeah.
skating was one of them that I remember really loving. I did like figure skating
Yeah.
grade 4, and it has been really useful. Like I've
Mm.
gone out to Somerset House a couple of times at Christmas, and I'm not one of the people holding onto the sides. I'm one of the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that can kind of like go backwards and like do some
Yeah.
cool stuff. So I thought I'd give that a go. And I went down to Queen's Way in London where they have ice skating
Yeah.
rink.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I managed to try a hobby that I used to be passionate about again as an adult
Right.
and still loved it. I
Mm.
still loved it. I really
Mm.
feel very at home on the ice and like wonder
Mm.
whether I could explore that more. Right now I'm in Tampa and there's ice skating is not really a thing here because it's too
Yeah.
hot, but like they have a hockey team. And so it's possible, like wherever you go to try and find your hobbies, and there's communities around to do that. But then it's just time, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
dedicate your time to something. And so that's why I went in London. I was like, let me give it a go. If I really love it, I can go back often and see how it is. I did really love it, but I
Mm.
didn't love it enough to commit the time to keep
For
going
sure.
back. Yeah.
Super interesting. I love that. I love the how that you went back to it and you still found that same kind of
Yeah.
resonance that you did when you were a kid. That's awesome. Do you know what's so funny? It's like I think openness to new experience is super key to finding like interest and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's like I think when you do that, you realize there's so much out there in life that can offer you so much value.
Yeah.
There's almost like you don't really have enough time on earth to really explore the depths of everything because
Right.
there's like levels to things. You could go do something, but there's someone that's been doing the same thing for 30
Yeah.
years. They can have a different taste or essence to that very thing.
I think that's what's so useful about listening to yourself and allowing your inner compass to guide you because stuff comes into your awareness. There's
Yeah.
loads of hobbies that you and I just haven't heard of. There's stuff that people
Right.
do like somewhere, probably just
Yeah.
down the road from where we live, but we
Yeah.
just haven't heard of it. We don't know it's a thing. And so for
Yeah.
some reason, stuff comes into our awareness, and then only certain things that come into our awareness pique our interest. And if
Yeah.
we're listening hard enough to ourselves, something that piques our interest should be given a little, like you said about the seed, should be
Yeah.
just watered a little bit. And then to see
Yeah.
if it brings you joy and to use that
Right.
inner compass to allow joy to guide you into what
Definitely.
you always meant to be. Maybe I'm always meant to be an ice skater and like that
Yeah.
was my destiny, but you just have to compass to actually get there. And I was just going to say that this is all about our personal time. This is all about our sort of like free time that we're
Yeah.
dedicating to certain
Yeah.
things. And I was wondering if we could slide the conversation over to work.
You mentioned that at the beginning. It's like aligning passion with work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. If you can do that, you're onto a winner.
So many people are frustrated at work and they feel like they are grinding away. Some people are doing it for the big bucks, and it's like they know that they are not passionate about work,
Yeah.
but they're receiving value in some other format. And some
Yeah.
people are grinding away and not receiving the big bucks. They're not getting
Yeah.
paid more than they need. And so they are giving up their time for something that is neither providing them joy nor monetary gain and stability in their
Yeah.
life. So, how difficult is it to be in a work environment and in a job that you're not passionate about? I think is a really great place to start. If there's any sort of like examples or situations that you've ever experienced through your career and through your working life where you felt that you are out of alignment with passion, and what does that really do to a human being to be in a workspace and dedicating your time contractually obligated to turn up to something that you're not feeling passionate about?
I definitely think it's a slow death, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many times have I worked jobs that I didn't feel was like really deeply in alignment with who I am as a person. And also, like you say, didn't feel passionate about it. And I think inner feeling, if you ignore it, it will get worse. But what you'll find it, you bring awareness to it, your mind generally will try and numb that feeling and you'll try and like just get by.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of courage to actually face that fact that actually, whatever it is that I'm doing probably isn't going to serve me. And the problem is, the longer you stay like that, the harder it is to leave. I think it's like proven, isn't it? Like if you stay in a queue long enough, and a new one comes and the new one's clearly quicker, you'll stay in the old one. The longer you stay there, it will start cementing into your life. It will become harder to leave it and becomes like a kind of comfort zone. And it comes down to fear, really, of ground zero. Like we're all terrified of this concept of ground zero. That if we leave what we're doing, that for some reason, everything's going to end badly and you're going to end up on the streets. Now, I've had experiences where I have lost everything and been in ground zero. and it's actually not that bad. And it's, to be honest, probably the best thing that could ever happen to me, because when that happened, I realized that there's nothing to lose. And really, at the end of the day, if you have that feeling, you should face it head on. It's a really good sign. If something doesn't feel right, listen to it. And the quicker you can act, I mean, there's so many examples I could give, like so many. I would only say now, literally now, right now in my life, I feel like the most aligned. Apart from that one time I was working at this wellbeing center for Flowworks, that and that was the only time I can really feel like, oh, I'm actually doing what I need to be doing in terms of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so pleased and impressed every time I speak to you, especially about work. You've been telling me, and I'm just feeling your energy as well, that you're just
Oh, thank you.
pleased and comfortable with your work. Right now, you're in a space where you are in alignment and are
Yeah.
passionate about something. And you've been passionate about this field of work for a long time. And perhaps it's the fact that you've given yourself the time to practice and to get really good at something that some people might consider you've had to use it as a hobby so that you could really practice and really get good at it. And it's been a
Yeah.
side project for a really long time so that
Yeah.
you could make it into your main project.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's basically what I found that I had to do. I think as well, like if you really love something as well, you'll do whatever it takes. I think that's
Yeah.
another key, isn't it? It's like really just falling in love with someone, like opening your heart to someone. It's the same with a passion. I think if you really open yourself up to something, you can't help but not do it.
That's
It's like you
exactly.
said, like when you don't do it, it will hurt.
Yeah.
Like a partner's not there. It's like, oh, I missed. So it's so weird. It's like things will fall into place. You'll always be tested in life, but you'll be given enough signs to go like, as long as you don't ignore those signs, you'll be good.
Yeah.
But it's when you ignore those signs, it's when you lose touch with yourself, kind of what you brushed on earlier. That's when you can kind of find yourself getting trapped. How about yourself?
I'm very much in alignment with my work right now, and having stepped away from the optometry field to progress my coaching business and to create content on subjects that I find complex and trying to make them simple for people to understand is really powerful stuff. And I can feel that I don't want to stop. You mentioned about not being able to not do it. There's days when I wake up and I'm like, right, well, I've got stuff to do, like I need to get on with my work. And I've come to a realization now that the amount of time that I have on this planet is finite. And so I can look at the whole of my life and I can work out like how much time I actually have to progress in this field and to create the value that I'd like to deliver, especially as this field kind of doesn't end. There's no edge of the map here. There's so much that you can explore and keep on going inwards and learn and share more. So I think maybe the field is particularly suited to growth and to expansion. It might be the field itself, but I think that it's me as well. I think that I'm feeling it and I get out of bed wanting to do more, and I can't wait to get on with work essentially, which is not the same as what I used to feel at the opticians.
So many people could relate to that feeling of like getting up and not wanting to do what they're doing. It's such a pandemic, isn't it? Like everyone feels that. So many people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went back to London recently for 2 weeks and actually did some work as an optician in Central, and I enjoyed it a lot. I found that really a wonderful experience. And I think it's because it was 2 weeks of the year and it was a dip of my toe back into a field where I have a sense of mastery and was able to put my normal feelings aside, so that if I go and work as an optician for a day, it's a waste of a day. And that even if I'm not doing any coaching or making any content, I'm still thinking, I'm still processing, I'm still doing stuff that helps me to do my work better. Even if it's just a rest day, like actually they're really valuable and make a big difference. But when I was furloughed from work, there was a really interesting experience that I went through where I was waking up 2 hours earlier than what I would normally be getting up for work. And I used to get up for work, I don't know, like 7 or something like that. And I used to drag myself out of bed and feel really frustrated and kind of rushing and everything like that. But as soon as I didn't have to go to work, I was getting up at 5, and 5 didn't feel early for me. I was really enjoying getting up at 5. And somehow that really enlightened me. Something unlocked in that time. And I was like, maybe I'm getting out of bed for the wrong reason. I'm getting out of bed because I have to get out of bed because I have to go to work, which isn't the same as getting out of bed at the time that you want to, because you've got this to do and you've got this to do and you've got this to do.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's so true. Because when you actually get out of bed because you want to go do something, it's not that internal struggle.
Bit like when you go on a holiday and you're waiting for the airport at 3 a.m. It's like, oh no, 3 in the morning is very
Yeah.
early, but you just don't feel it.
Last month, I worked pretty much every day, I'd say. I had to do something every day, kind of like what you were saying. And it's cheesy, but it's true. It's like, if you do what you love, you don't work. You don't work. It's not work.
Yeah.
I'll do that anyway. I'll do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing anyway, whether I'm getting paid to do it or not. Speaking of holidays, I went to see my friend in Switzerland. And to be fair, I did do a little bit of work, very minor amount. But I still continued. I still made some films. I shot a documentary, and I wasn't getting paid for it. So I just did it because I was in that mindset and I enjoyed it. It was cool. And
Cool.
one thing I will say, it was so funny. We're talking about alignment, right? I've realized that it's so deep. You can even doing something you're passionate about, but still not be in alignment with your own passion. It's insane. I guess that's what like true art is when you're freely expressing yourself with what it is that you see. What I mean by that, it's like I've been doing many different things, like filmmaking wise, like filming for anywhere between dentists to short films to like promo videos and stuff like that, and music videos, right? And 100% of the time, it's not my own stuff. I am just a creative vessel for other people's stuff. So, and it's really interesting to see how you have this like set of values in the way you see the world, and how like even though you're still doing what you want, that still gets challenged even within the world that you're in. I'm still doing things that I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should actually do that.
Yeah.
If you say no, you're kind of scared. And it was funny because like when I went away with my friend, I didn't take it seriously, but this little video I made, at least I know for sure that's exactly the sort of thing I want to get out into the world. And the feedback that I got was really good because it was like, oh, it made me feel like this. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to be a part of. But sooner or later, you're going to come into contact with even that level. The first level is like, I'm sending my soul. I want to be doing something else. So you go do that thing. And then the second level is like, that thing then needs to be in complete alignment with what you think is true.
Yeah.
And that will get I don't know if you found that. I've been tested so much recently. I feel like if you had to sell my soul, I'd probably be a millionaire, but I don't know if I would want to do that,
Yeah, I think it's really valuable to just be constantly on high alert, that it's easy to slip back into selling out. Following your passion can lead you to the ground zero that people fear. If you were really, truly following your passion, I don't know, there must be loads of people's passions that just don't make any money. They're not money making, generating revenue passions, and they have to be passion project. Like I can think of maybe activism. If somebody's like really passionate about activism, it's like you might have to move to a country where it's very difficult to survive. You might have to live in a tent. You might have to eat a very minimal diet. And so you might have to give up some of the luxurious things about being an employee of the capitalistic system. And then the second level, as I understand what you're talking about, is then to not sell out within the industry of your passion again.
Exactly. I've got a beautiful story about this. Like there was a guy who used to teach me at university called Mark Jenkins. He stuck to his guns no matter what. Like he was going to make his film the way he wanted to do it, and no matter what, it was going to be that way. And he would use Vimeo as his platform to show his work, and he'd get like 20 views, and he would just literally just make kind of stories about the things that he really wanted to see. So I was like, gotta respect him for that. And anyway, I did some research about him 2 years ago because I'd lost touch. It's been 8 years. I was like, I wonder what Mark's did, because I was like, I want to rewatch some of the stuff he'd put on Vimeo. And I googled, and he'd made this movie called Babe, and he'd won a BAFTA, Best British Breakthrough Film of the Year. Oh my god, I knew that guy. And I watched it, and basically it's still the same thing that he did. It just so happens that people just saw it and it got celebrated. It's just a guy doing his thing. It's so amazing. And finally, like, it's kind of got a bit of recognition. It's super cool to see that, like, because you can just tell. And that's why it works so well. And I think when it's hard and you'll be challenged, but if you can really stick to yourself, okay, fair enough. You might not be super successful, maybe, or you might, but not only will it feel better when you actually do it, but like the end product will be probably more.
There's like a spiritual success that you achieve when you, it's the kind of success that you get to go to sleep at night with a peaceful heart to say that you're being totally authentic, and the creation and the legacy that you're making and leaving is exactly the way that you'd like it to be, rather than having to tweak it. And we know of a lot of people in Hollywood who can't wait to not, like, they do the films that they need to make the buck, and then they do what they actually want to do afterwards. And like finally they've made it well enough that they can afford and support themselves. And then they come out with their actual creations, which might not be as successful, might not be as financially lucrative, but actually are the truth, their authentic truth.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that as well, is there? Like, I think if you have your long-term vision and you're working towards that and building towards that, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's the
Yeah.
question, because I had a really wonderful discussion with somebody recently at a hostel that I was staying at. So I didn't know her. And she was basically asking, how can she defeat this struggle that she was going through, where she didn't know whether she was permitted to do things that were going to help her to pay her way in
Yeah.
conflict with her emotional, spiritual evolution and growth that she was trying to do and following her passion. So she was just really conflicted and struggling with this dilemma of balancing permission to survive and balancing
Yeah.
permission to exist. And the world is expensive, just rent,
Yeah.
existing, food. It's like the lifestyle that we have. We need an iPhone to like do some
Yeah.
of the work that we have. It's like all of this stuff is a challenge. And we were talking about how the world of formless and the spiritual conquest that you're on sometimes requires you to put up with selling out a little bit, because you are doing it for like a greater purpose, and that you know that this is not truly you, but that this gives you access and opens the door for you to then be truly you afterwards.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that? I think it's okay to do that. I think as long as you know, it's when you lose sight of that vision and then get stuck in that thing and you're just selling out and then you just forget why it was that you were doing it in the first place. That's definitely happened to me, you know. I think a lot of people are in that position as well. Like, it's a tragedy when you hear it. You know, they tell you the stories like, oh yeah, like what did you want to do? I wanted to do this thing. I wanted to be a vet. And I was like, did you do it? No, it's been like 20 years now. They've let it go. Tragic. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. It was in a float tank. It was just this crazy experience that I went into this kind of like void state, and the universe was playing me this song in this state. And it was like the song was made out of all the lost souls that never really found their passion, and was playing me this song, like teaching me how important it is to actually connect with that part of yourself that is passionate. Because if you to really break it down, what is it? It's a feeling. It's not the thing that you do, it's the feeling it gives you. So it's like you're connected with something higher than yourself. So it's like you can do that technically, but don't ever lose that, because it's like you're right. Like life is kind of short, and it'd
Yeah.
be a tragedy to live life to lose that, because we all have it with children. So it's like
Yeah, fascinating. I'm really looking forward to doing a float works one day, because the stories that you tell me about when you're in the tank are just phenomenal. So you mentioned the word numbing, and that you have to numb yourself a little bit. So what about the people who are aware that they're numbing themselves, they're doing it on purpose, they're trying to get through life, and that they are unable to focus on passion and come into alignment? Perhaps they have responsibilities or circumstances that require them to put their passions to the side and to numb and to get through. What would you reflect on to say, like from your experience, or maybe like things that you've seen other people that have worked very well, who are forced to numb themselves to silence the desire for passion, and that they still have to go to get on with their life and to grind away in whatever form that takes?
Yeah, it's going to vary on person. I can speak from my own experience, and I had it not too long ago. I think the first couple of things were the worst thing that could ever happen to you is if you can do this thing that you don't like doing well and you get rewarded for it. That can be quite dangerous. And there's a quote like, the good's the enemy of the great, or the good's the guardian to the palace of the great, or something. So it's kind of like that you have to be really careful, because if for me, I was always quite lucky that I was never very good at things I wasn't passionate about. So if I wasn't passionate about something, it kind of self-destruct on myself. So I was kind of forced. I had like no other option. I think if that's not the case, if you're doing something and it just doesn't align, but you can kind of still pull it off, and it's enabling you to survive, I think deep introspection into like, what exactly are you scared of letting go of? Because that's ultimately what it is. You know, you're going to have to go from one way of being to another way of being, and your life's going to have to change. So you're going to have to get used to that. Like, you're just going to have to accept the fact that your life's going to have to change for you to change the situation that you're in. And it's generally down to two things. It's the fear of that thing that we were talking about earlier. What's it called? Ground zero. We're all scared that if we follow our passions, that we're going to lose everything. Ultimately, that's not true. That's a complete illusion. It's calamity thinking. And ground zero isn't even that bad, even if you did get to that point, because you can just start again. You can go back to what you were doing. It's actually really easy to actually just go and do what you love. The world wants you to do it. Everyone wants you to do it as well, deep down. Because when you start doing it, people will give you a pat on the back. And it's going to be something inside us. It could be form of trauma as well. So we have to actually look and start like analyzing ourselves, introspect, and actually, why not work with someone? You know, like speak to people, get your ideas out there. You know, really ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm so scared of not pursuing what it is that I love to do? What's that fear of failure? It's another thing. Like secretly think, oh, I could do that and I would be very successful. You don't want to challenge that belief because it's like going to go against your ego. There's that as well. That I had that as well. It's taken me about 10 years to realize these things, that actually it's super simple. And God, I wish I knew what I knew now 10 years ago, but I feel like I've had to go through so many jobs that I didn't enjoy, being completely out of alignment and stuff like that. So I think deep down as well, you just suffer as well. You're just causing suffering for no reason. I noticed that when I did follow what it was that I really wanted to do, I got these signs and they were just enough to keep me going. Like these little weird moments when I went full time and doing what I'm doing. As soon as that happened, like everyone started coming to work. Then it just died. Then it would be like just enough and I'd get just enough recognition. So that's another thing as well, is like really looking out for the signs because they'll be there. There'll be things telling you like, don't do this or do this. You have to be very attuned to your surroundings to get to that.
Well, I think like all of the things that you kind of mentioned there are about understanding yourself and listening to you and to making sure that you're in tune with yourself throughout this process, which is the problem with numbing, right? Because you're purposefully staying away from being in tune with yourself. And I think that was really valuable to hear that like there's certain reasons that you're staying in there and looking at what it is that you're actually afraid of. What is it that you're afraid of losing? And what is it that you're afraid of not having by leaving and by changing your work environment or your lifestyle? Once you figure that out, then you can stay numb if you have to, but at least you know why you're numbing and you know that this is the catastrophe that you're avoiding, like ground zero or whatever else it is that people are avoiding. And then you can be at peace with it because you know that this catastrophe is really important and it's worth being numb because you don't want to end up in this situation. And I was specifically talking about people who have circumstances and responsibilities which might be quite difficult for you and I to really understand it and reflect the complexities of people who get up every day knowing that they're actually just going to work because they've got kids at home that need to eat today.
Yeah, that's totally fair, isn't it? Like we might get to a point in our lives that our passions might have to change, and raising a family, that's okay. Sometimes our life's purpose, in a sense, will change in the way that we might not want it to be the way we thought it was. It might be, raising a family and like there's some magic in that. So the quicker that we can kind of like divert our path. Because I remember speaking to a friend once and then like, I can't remember what he was doing, but he was completely doing something completely different. How was that? He's like, it was just the way it is. He had a really good attitude towards it. Just this is how it is now. I'm not holding on to what was. Because I was like, this goes back to what we were saying earlier. And when I was 10, I wanted to be a professional footballer. And then very quickly, I changed that real fast. And I never held on to it. Other things I did. Other things I held on to. So like filmmaking, I wanted to do when I was 12. And that made the most sense. That was like the most like resonant I've ever had with anything. That went, 25, I'd stopped caring. Then I found it again 5 years later. There might be that. And it might be that your responsibilities change for now. You go back to it. Then when the kids leave home, go back to whatever it is that you're doing. But you're right, there is time. You can still do something within football. You can still be a coach, so there's always something, you can. That's another thing as well. Get smart on how you can approach what it is you want to do.
It's so true. Like football's a really great example for getting smart because like not everybody's built to be a footballer. Like some people just aren't that good at football. And it's like you can play for your local team. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to actually be on Arsenal, like you might not make it to that level, but there's lots of other spaces that you can still be involved with something that bring you love and joy. And playing football, like how much can you really play football? Probably like 5 times a week, 6 times a week. And for 1-2 hours and training and all that kind of stuff, maybe there's other spaces where you get to enjoy the love for it. And this is a bit unfair, there's a bit of like, I can feel how this might sound unfair, but I think not everybody is meant to do what they love in the way that they would like it to be. And
I agree.
So it's like great, like if you really love football and you want to play football. Like no one's stopping you from playing football, but you don't have to be the highest level of football unless you're really good, unless you have that natural talent and the desire and the determination. And some people have the desire and the determination.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. Remember, like a meditation teacher of mine once said a really good point to me. It was like a story. I can't remember where it came from, but it was about this artist and he would pray to God every day. And he was like, God, you have to make my art well known to the world because it's going to change humanity in the right way. And he kept praying and his art, no one cared. And he kept consistent every single day for like 4 years. And then he gave up. So, you know what? All right, fine. Yeah, I get the message. Right? He bitterly gave up. And then the next like week or whatever, his art became well renowned. And he prayed to God. He's like, why now? I've given up. And then you do it. And then the response was, it's like, if I gave it you then, you'd do it for you. If I give it you now, you did it for me. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Because sometimes we have a passion, but intention might not be as pure as we realize. And by
Mm,
actually doing it, we have to almost have this
mm,
like depth of what was impure and to really shine the light through.
right.
Like that's definitely been a case with me. A lot of the stuff that I used to write and make, I'm so happy that I didn't do a lot of that stuff and get it out there because of the person that I was. And like I'm a lot less attached now to the work that I do when I put it out. Don't get me wrong, I still am. It's still a process of allowing yourself to unattach from the work that you do and the passions that you have. And like once it's done and it's impersonal when it's there, like flowing in the cosmos for people to resonate or not with.
Yeah.
That's super important because then the work that you do can also be a tool of like spiritual evolution.
Great. That's really fascinating. Thank you so much for the time that we've had today. It's an excellent story to end on, and really pleased with the conversation. I think that is really valuable. We've gone through so
Thank you.
much. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you
Yeah,
very much. If anybody has any questions, we'll be able to put Dom's details in the video, and you can always reach out to me anytime. So we'd be very happy to speak to people about their passions and achieving their passions and seeking them and fighting that urge to play the game of form instead of following our own spiritual evolution and spiritual
yeah,
growth.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.